I take a lot of pride in what I wear on stage. I think that's one of the very important things. It's where you look nice for the people that paid their money to see you, and try to entertain them where they enjoy themselves.
Porter Wagoner was one of country music's most recognizable figures. For over 5 decades, he wore rhinestone suits, hosted one of the longest-running country music TV shows in history, and helped shape the careers of countless artists, including Dolly Parton. But behind the glitter and polished image, there was another story. One that rarely made headlines. One that friends, colleagues, and even family didn't talk about. For years, rumors followed him about control, contracts, missing tapes, and a long-lost memoir that might have exposed secrets inside Nashville's tight-knit country music world. Now, after years of silence, new information has surfaced. A longtime assistant has come forward, and what he claims could change how we remember Porter entirely. Let's take a closer look. Wagoner was born in 1927 in West Plains, Missouri. He grew up poor, raised during the Great Depression, and worked odd jobs before landing a radio show in his 20s. Music was always his escape, and eventually his path to stardom. By the 1950s, he signed with RCA Victor and became a rising country music star. His unique blend of gospel-tinged ballads and slick storytelling songs earned him a loyal fan base. But his image did just as much work as his voice. Porter became known for his sparkling rhinestone suits, designed by Nudie Cohn, which stood out against the muted tones of the era. It wasn't subtle, but it worked. In 1960, The Porter Wagoner Show debuted in syndication. It was a half-hour variety program featuring music, comedy bits, and guest performers. The show reached millions of homes each week and ran for over 2 decades. Porter was a natural host, warm, friendly, and in control. That need for control was something that never left him. Colleagues said he was meticulous behind the scenes. He decided the songs, picked the guests, and shaped the format. He wasn't just the face of the show, he was its producer, editor, and quality control. He was respected, but not always liked. Some musicians said he could be demanding and unforgiving, but there was no denying he built something big from very little. Behind the flash, though, Porter remained cautious. Success didn't make him soft. He still kept his business close, trusted only a few, and always seemed to be thinking several steps ahead. In 1967, a young singer named Dolly Parton joined the Porter Wagoner Show as a regular cast member. She had big hair, a bigger voice, and a sharp sense of humor that matched Porter's energy. Audiences loved them together, and their chemistry was instant. They began recording duets, touring as a team, and quickly became one of country music's most iconic pairings. But as Dolly's star rose, the balance shifted. She started writing her own songs, building a solo career, and gaining more public attention than even Porter himself. Porter wasn't thrilled. While he'd helped launch her national career, he reportedly felt blindsided when she announced she was leaving the show in 1974. He believed she was still under contract. Lawsuits followed. Dolly maintained she respected him, but that she needed to grow on her own. Their split became one of country music's most talked about moments. It wasn't just business, it was personal. The emotional toll on Porter was clear. He publicly criticized Dolly in interviews. Behind the scenes, he reportedly became more controlling, more careful about who he allowed close. The parting song she wrote, "I Will Always Love You," was her way of saying goodbye. She played it for him privately. He approved it, but years later admitted he never got over the separation. Though they later reconciled, many close to the situation say the relationship was never the same. The loss stung. And from that point on, Porter became more guarded, more obsessed with legacy, and less trusting of people in the business. After Dolly's departure, Porter kept performing, but the industry was changing. His TV show ended in 1981, and newer artists began to dominate radio. He still appeared at the Grand Ole Opry, but his presence in mainstream country music started to fade. During this time, Porter became more withdrawn. Friends said he was still professional, still sharp, but more reserved. He didn't host many people backstage anymore. Interviews became rare, and those who knew him well said he always seemed to be watching the room. He also became obsessed with documentation. He kept notebooks full of handwritten entries. He reportedly recorded phone calls, kept carbon copies of letters, and stored boxes of old contracts, some going back decades. Some believed he was writing a memoir. Others thought he was gathering evidence. Of what? No one could say. A few suspected he felt burned by the industry and wanted to set the record straight on his terms. There were quiet whispers about tapes that went missing, notes that were burned, and conversations Porter didn't want anyone else to hear. One assistant claimed he was preparing for something big, though nothing was ever released. Whatever he was working on, it was private. He trusted very few. And it seemed like Porter, once a constant on America's TV screens, was now retreating into a world of silence, notes, and locked drawers. In his final years, Porter's obsession with control seemed to shift from stage management to legacy preservation. People around him noticed he was collecting more than memories. He was building files. He kept cassette tapes of conversations, some of which weren't recorded with permission. His notes included names, dates, and dollar amounts. It wasn't clear if this was all meant for a book or for protection. Either way, he was careful about who knew. Some assistants claimed he was compiling a personal history, not just of himself, but of others. Industry disputes, royalty disagreements, and TV ownership claims appeared in his files. One person recalled him saying, "If I'm gone and they lie about me, I want the record to speak." There was talk of a vault, a locked cabinet Porter kept in a back room, rarely opened, and known only to a few. After his death, that room was sealed. No tell-all memoir ever appeared. No tapes were released. Whether he meant for the world to see any of it, or whether it was all just a backup plan, is still unknown. What is clear is this: Porter didn't want his story told by someone else. As Porter entered his final years, those around him noticed that he was changing, not in appearance or health, but in behavior. He still showed up to the Grand Ole Opry in rhinestone suits and still commanded the stage, but offstage, he was more guarded than ever. He started adding more locks to his home, some on the interior doors. Visitors, even close friends and longtime collaborators, had to schedule ahead and check in with an assistant. He installed a few small security cameras, not for show, but for actual monitoring. It wasn't paranoia in the extreme sense, but it raised eyebrows. He also kept detailed personal logs. A clipboard sat near the front door where guests were asked to sign their names and write down the time they arrived and left. One assistant later described the house as part music archive, part office, part bunker. Those closest to him noticed he began referencing unfinished business more often. Sometimes it sounded like old industry issues, contracts, royalties, missed payments. Other times it seemed deeper, like personal betrayals he couldn't let go of. He didn't go into detail, but the mood around him had changed. In those final months, he reportedly reached out to people he hadn't spoken to in years. One letter was said to have gone to Dolly Parton. Whether she replied or even received it remains unknown. No public acknowledgement was ever made. Still, Porter performed up until shortly before his passing in October 2007. To fans, he remained the showman they remembered. But those behind the scenes knew something else was weighing on him, something he never shared publicly. And when he died, those questions didn't fade. They only deepened. When Wagner's will was read, it contained what most expected: standard instructions for dividing his estate, including rights to music royalties, physical property, and personal effects. No scandal, no surprises. But those who worked closest to him knew there was more. There had always been talk of a back room in his Nashville home, one that required a key Porter kept on him at all times. After his death, that room was sealed almost immediately by the estate manager. What was inside wasn't documented. No photos, no inventory list. A former assistant claimed it held stacks of notebooks, handwritten letters, cassette tapes, and a locked steel cabinet. Porter had reportedly called it his archive, though no one else had ever seen its full contents. Family members tried to gain access to the materials, but were blocked by the legal executor. One relative even hired a lawyer to challenge the estate, but the case never made it to court. In the months that followed, fans expected some posthumous project, perhaps a memoir, a compilation of unreleased recordings, or at least a tribute album. But nothing came. Years passed. The locked room was eventually cleared, but not publicly. The materials Porter spent decades collecting were never disclosed, and no new content ever emerged under his name. Some say the tapes and files were destroyed. Others believe they were locked away by legal order to avoid disputes or reputational risk. A few even claim someone close to the industry acquired them privately and buried the story. Whatever the case, the vault disappeared along with the man who created it. And for all the precision Porter put into documenting his legacy, the final chapter remains one the public never got to read. In 2023, a decade and a half after Porter's passing, a former assistant gave an anonymous interview to a small Nashville music history podcast. The assistant, who had worked closely with Porter during the 1990s and early 2000s, made a series of claims that reignited old rumors. According to him, Porter had not only kept detailed personal archives, he had done so for a reason. The assistant described cassette recordings of phone calls, notes about former managers and collaborators, and even documents referencing royalty disputes dating back to the 1960s. He didn't trust the system, the assistant said. He believed people owed him, and he wanted proof if anyone tried to change the story after he was gone. The assistant also claimed Porter had written a letter of instruction for a future release, a book, a documentary, or some kind of public statement. But before anything could be published, the files were reportedly taken by a third party and locked away. No tapes were provided to back up these claims. The podcast received attention briefly, then faded from public view. But among people in the country music world, it stirred familiar suspicions that Wagner had intended to reveal something about the business, about people close to him, or about his own struggles, and was stopped before he could. Skeptics argue there's no hard proof, but supporters point to his behavior in his final years: the obsessive record-keeping, the sealed room, the cryptic comments, as signs he was preparing for something more. Whether the truth was buried, blocked, or simply forgotten, one thing is clear. Even now, the full story of Wagner hasn't been told. Porter was a defining figure in country music. He brought millions of Americans into the genre, helped launch Dolly Parton's career, and gave the country its first real taste of primetime television exposure. His legacy is undeniable. But like many legends, his story is more complicated than it looks. Behind the suits, the songs, and the smile was a man who never fully trusted the industry he helped build. He saw friends rise and fall. He watched as business deals soured and legacies were rewritten. And he seemed determined not to let the same thing happen to him. Whether he was collecting evidence, writing a hidden memoir, or simply trying to protect his side of the story, we may never know. The vault is gone. The tapes are silent. And those who knew the full truth aren't talking. What remains is a legacy both celebrated and clouded, filled with brilliance, pride, and a quiet sense of unfinished business. And maybe that's the real mystery.